sais, près de tout le monde, de ne pas pouvoir dans cette conférence en français, bien que je puisse parler un peu dans votre langue. Il m'est très difficile de parler de contenu technique, mais je peux comprendre tout. Hein? J'espère que vous pourrez m'excuser. Et j'espère aussi que vous apprécierez cet exposé que j'ai préparé avec beaucoup d'amour pour vous. Et maintenant, je vais commencer avec la présentation en anglais, si c'est bien pour vous. Et je vais parler slow. Je mélange très fou à ma tête. Je peux parler 12 langues, et espagnol, français, italien, anglais, chinois. Mais c'est différent pour parler de contenu technique. Hein? So I will speak about Flask and how much of a microframework it is. But first, I want to talk about who am I. So my name is Diana Rodriguez. I'm a Google developer expert in web technologies, Google Maps, Google Cloud, Firebase. I'm an Auth0 ambassador. I'm a Microsoft MVP, and it doesn't matter. I am someone who learns new things every day. If you want to be in touch with me, I would appreciate if you follow me on Twitter. It's Kotufa82, and I always like to talk to people about technology, about Python, about anything. You can also visit my website. It's superdie.dev. Now that we know who am I not? This woman. I don't know if you've seen the film Matrix. This is the Oracle. I'm not the Oracle, which means I don't know everything. I don't have all the answers, but I like to share the knowledge I've learned throughout my career with you. So if you have any questions, keep in mind that sometimes I don't have all the answers, but we can find them together. Also, I want to warn you. This talk is framework agnostic, which means I'm not going to favor one framework better than another one. I believe in the weapon of choice philosophy, which means whatever tool, whatever framework you choose is the best choice. If it works, it's good. Zero wars, zero mobs, and zero cults, which means, again, I'm not saying one framework is better than the other one. And, well, I have a lot of obvious examples. I believe that simple things make a difference, and this is my best way to share knowledge with people. To give you some context, I'm going to talk about Flask, and I'm going to be making comparisons with another framework of Python. It's called Django. It's one of the most popular and common frameworks used in Python, and it has differences in comparison to Flask. So before I carry on, let's talk about Django and why am I comparing it in terms of performance and everything to Flask. So Django is a Python-based, and it's free and open source web framework. It has an interesting architectural pattern. It's called the MTV, or Model Template View. And it's really good for complex database-driven websites. Then Flask, it's a Python microframework. I say it's based in the bestest intentions because the people who thought about Flask wanted to make it easy for developers to put things out there. I like it that Flask is minimal, and with Flask we can build really sturdy and strong web and RESTful apps in a very easy way. But what is a microframework? Let's think about the Avengers, right? So say that instead of having all of the Avengers, we choose one. And in my case, I choose Doctor Strange. He's my favorite Avenger. If you don't think of concepts in this way, then this is a sample architecture of a microframework. It means it has the most needed components to get your application out there. So writing, login, boom, that's it. If this is not good enough, I like to think of microframeworks as Lego blocks. You can start with one, and then you can add more blocks or take them as you wish. If we compare this microframework architecture to the Django architecture, then it's a different thing. It's got more complexity, more things working at the same time. But if this drawing is not good enough, I would say, I think of the Django architecture like not one, but the whole team. I compare it to the All Blacks rugby team from New Zealand because I love rugby and it's my most favorite team. But we're talking about a whole team, very strong, but also we're talking about many participants of a team, many team members. I'd like to show how simple Flask it is to develop websites and applications. We can develop a Hello World app in less than 10 lines of code, zero complication. So let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, nine lines. It's got a beautiful syntax, and look at the route decorators. This is a common pattern in Flask, and it's one of the reasons I love how readable the code is. And if we go through this structure, we can see that we are importing Flask, then we instantiate it. Then we have our first route, that is main. And then in here, we can add our logic. In this case, I said, hola, PyLadies, because I was showing PyLadies that it was very easy to get a result. And then here we run our app in main. And then the result of this, boom, 10 lines, less than 10 lines of code. If we think of these frameworks in an objective way, we have to think of the pros and the cons. So for the pros, the learning curve. It is quite easy for someone who already knows programming to learn Flask. And if you're starting with programming, Flask is also a good choice. It's a production-ready framework, which means that as you're developing, you can launch your server and actually see it live as you're coding, which is also a pro. Another thing is the routing. The routing is grand. It's very easy. It's readable. It supports sessions and cookies. It's an extensible framework. And something good is that because it's so minimal, so tiny, it does not come with baked in ORM or admin. So you can choose the database you want. You can choose the admin panel you want as you wish. You are 100% in control. Now, for the cons, obviously, for Flask, there's no cons. Nah, I'm joking. I would say it can be complex for big applications because too many moving parts can consume a lot of time in development. Then also the community is very small in comparison to Django. So sometimes if you are looking for a solution, it can be a bit difficult. But again, there's a chance to create something new. So, is Flask for small projects only? I would say in the world of Flask, there are hundreds of dependencies that will help us create really awesome projects that are scalable. So do you want to connect to a database? Don't worry, you can have the ORM of your like. Do you want to version your API? You will find a library for that. Do you want to integrate migrations or an interactive shell of your models? You can do that. I recommend Flask Manager. So the community is very active in that aspect, and there are many things that are native to Django that you can find as Flask dependencies. And if not, then there's the opportunity of creating something new. Then why is it called a microframework? Well, don't let the microframework word confuse you. It is called a microframework only because it comes out of the box with the minimal requirements to get your apps or your APIs shipped, which means that because it's a tiny framework, you can put more things on top. Now, can it do everything Django does? Well, everything you can do with Django, you can do it with Flask. Don't even worry about that. You can define routes, you can work with forms, you can render templates, you can send emails, you can define unit tests. Everything that you can think of can be done, and if not, it can be created. And then, when should I use Flask instead of Django? I think this is simple. If you're working with microservices, if you're working with serverless, this is really good for serverless. Or if you're working with IoT, Flask is very good because you can run a Flask server in a Raspberry Pi, for example, because it's a very simple framework. It can run in these scenarios. And now let's talk about full stack Flask. Full stack with a micro framework. Well, guess what? Yes. You can use Flask with the major frameworks out there as part of a backend, like Flask and React. Flask and Angular, believe it or not. Flask and Vue, and the best one. This makes me very happy, very excited. Flask and Svelte. Now, let's talk about Flask in action. Let's see. I'm going to show you an application I developed myself, for myself. Those are the URLs, nextmode-scout.appspot.com. And then you can see the GitHub repo. And for context, I want to show you something. I have type 1 diabetes, which is why I have this sensor over here. And I need insulin. Oh, where's my insulin pen? Oh, there's an insulin pen around here. I have a lot of medications. Well, totally lost my insulin pen. Here it is. I have to apply insulin. I also have a pump. But anyway, if you go to dianox.superdi.dev, you will see something like this. And this is a dashboard that shows my blood sugar levels in real time. This dashboard is basically part of the Night Scout project. It's a web-based continuous glucose monitor. So it gets glucose data in real time, and the values are predicted 30 minutes ahead using an autoregressive second order model. This server reads from a MongoDB containing data from this sensor, and then if I'm too high or too low, I get alarms. But what happens? I have a sensor, right? Then this data goes to my phone, and let's see, we can see this data right now. I'm 114, so not bad. This is actually very good. And then from this server, from this bridge, I can send that data to the dashboard. And then with that, I can summon my pump and give myself insulin because I make those decisions based on that data. Now, what's the problem? Because the insulin data and the blood glucose data goes to my phone, yeah, these devices, these applications have alarms, but in moments of crisis, say when I am sleeping, I cannot hear them. But strangely, I can always hear my phone ringing, which is what the idea was, to make my life and the lives of those other diabetic people who have the same issues, taking advantage of the simplicity of Flask and Vonage APIs. So let's see, how do we do this? So we have a range of values, one for low and one for high. So I need to grab the readings for at least the last hour, and I'm going to use a Python thread with a scheduler. And then if ranges are below or higher than what I say, in this, for example, what you see in there, it has to be low is below 70 and high being over 180. I configure that through environment variables, and then if it's out of that range, it fires an alert. There's also an alert if it doesn't get data for like a set period of time, and in this case, to send a message to all my emergency contacts, right? And then a second scheduler to grab that fresh data. So how do I do this? I made a simple Flask app that allows me to log in and configure my Night Scout details, and in this case, with Google authentication through Firebase. So this is very simple, no fancy design or anything. So in here, I can configure the entries endpoint to grab my blood glucose readings data, then my phone number to receive a call. So the first person this is going to call is me to say, Diana, your blood sugar is high. An emergency contact, in this case, my mom, who will get notified if I don't pick up the phone. And then I can add up to 5 additional contacts who will be notified should, if my mom doesn't pick up, then it goes to the next one. If the next person doesn't pick up, it goes to the next one, and so on, one by one. Now let's see the technical details that make developing this app a really good experience. The first one is, for our views, Flask uses Jinja as the template engine, and this is pure HTML. So in this case, we have a parent template defining content blocks to be used by other children templates. See, for example, I'm in the example, I'm only using the head block. So these blocks will display the code that come from the children templates. And this is located in a folder inside of a static folder. And then something very important is the URL for function, and it points to JavaScript and CSS in static, which is a very comfortable and elegant way. Say I can point to CSS libraries, like in this case, Materialize, or I can probably use Vue.js from the CDN, if it was the case. And then say I'm going to a child template, and if we see this block extends layout, login inherits from layout. And then the renderer will load layout with any variations I add to this file, to the login file. And these variants will be defined within those blocks we set in layout. For example, I'm using the head block I used before, right? Then obviously I add the rest of my logic, right? On the Python side, then I define my routes, and say, for example, I'm using login, and in the case of where we're handling the Python side of everything, I showed all the examples thinking of login, but you see I basically define my route. My route is login, and then I define the methods, and then I add my functions and the logic in a simple way. If you want to know how I built this application, you can go to this address, and you can screenshot or probably write it down. I will leave the links for the for all the resources anyway, and then you can see a step-by-step tutorial on this. Also, if you want to see Flask in action with React, you can head to this repository on GitHub and check it out. This is work in progress. So, in conclusion, Flask is an awesome option if you're starting your journey with Python. And it's not, and if not, sorry, if you're not starting with Python, if you're experienced, I think it's a great option as well. Good thing is, it's not limited to only small projects. You can add or take to meet your needs. And then once you gain proficiency with Flask, you can easily move to Django. Excuse me. Or maybe you won't need to move at all. This is the first time I ever sneeze in giving a talk. Anyway, so when we think about Flask, is it a micro framework or more like a mighty framework? If you want to learn more about Flask and all the things I've shared with you, I want to show you this slide, which is basically some resources. It includes a tutorial to use Flask with Svelte, a tutorial for Vue.js and Flask. Then there's a repository where you can see a lot of resources with Flask, like a long list. And the last one is, oh, that's repeated twice. It's a good tutorial for Flask. Down there, you can see my slides link, and that's it. Merci beaucoup. If you have any questions, let me know. I'm going to leave the resources page in here, and then si vous avez des questions, c'est bien pour moi. As you wish.
Hello Diana. Good morning. My name is Armel Yara, and I am GGG's Cocody co-organizer and co-organizer of this this week tech Ivory Coast. And thank you for presentation. Thank you very much. It's very helpful for us. So now, if the student have a question for you, and we will translate and give you. So, OK. Si vous avez des questions concernant concernant en fait sa session, on vous écoute maintenant si vous avez des questions. Voilà. Oui, est-ce qu'il y a quelqu'un qui a des questions en fait? Voilà, elle vient de partager son slide, donc vous pouvez récupérer ça après en fait. Thank you, Diana, for link about your slides.
De rien.
OK.
Tu sais que j'ai appris français au lycée, j'ai étudié 2 ans seulement. Et je peux comprendre et tout, mais pour parler, c'est différent. Parce que je n'ai pas des amis ici pour parler ou pratiquer. Et je ne me rappelle pas de toutes les choses que j'ai appris. Et si tu ne pratiques pas, je perds presque tout mon vocabulaire, mais c'est très cool pour moi être ici et parler avec vous parce que c'est une grande opportunité pour moi pour pratiquer un petit peu et pour parler avec vous de technologie, de Flask, de Python.
Oui, c'est super. En fait, tu parles bien français d'abord même. Déjà, c'est bien en fait. On comprend bien en fait. Félicitations. Voilà.
Je crois que nous avons perdu Armel.
Oui, il est parti. On a une question. Quels sont les avantages? Ah, ok, il est de retour.
So I would say in terms of Flask compared to Node.js, Flask can help you build applications and APIs with Python. And it's the best way to use a minimal framework. In terms of Node.js, you have complications like, I would say the first and biggest one, node modules.
OK, Ayman, tu as compris en fait. Je fais la traduction. Bon, OK, d'accord. OK, d'accord, il n'y a pas de souci. Si tu as compris, ça marche. Alors, s'il y a une autre question concernant sa présentation, Wilfried, allez.
Ok, j'ai une question. Ok, hello Diana, I'm Wilfried Dale. And I want to know, with what technology are you take to make your apps, your mobile app?
So for mobile apps with Flask or with Python, you can use Beware. Because I see you have a really cool setting of a Raspberry Pi in your picture. I like Secret Python. There's also MicroPython, and Flask can run on Raspberry Pis as a web server. But yeah, for mobile apps, Beware and Python is good. I think in this case, if we talk about Flask, it'd be good at least for the side of endpoints and APIs, and not so much for web, unless you are using JavaScript to make it a progressive web app, only on the front end side of things.
Okay, thanks.
OK, d'autres questions concernant Flask? Est-ce qu'il y en a qui sont qui veulent poser des questions? Diana, moi, I'm very happy to to learn about your session today. I am Python and JavaScript developer also, and I am use Flask to build some application, web application and mobile application. So about endpoint, do you have a resource for any to solve to resolve any solution, any problems of use, because I'm facing about that.
It depends. That's a broad question. In terms of APIs, meaning dynamic routes. That's that's actually a very interesting question. There are a number of tools you can use for handling dynamic routes with Flask. If you're using variable names, normally I use variable names in my functions. Say for example, I'm thinking of a good way to show it on screen, but I can't do it. So say variable names in your .py file, and then you get your database information to display. You'll want to pass parameters into the template, so you can reference those parameters, and then basically set up the routes manually for anything that doesn't add up. But the route decorators that are part of Flask by default are basically the answer. You can basically add methods, you can add parameters, and control the response from whatever it's up to you. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, thank you. We have another question about dynamic route. Flask, can he handle them? Question from Herman Zuama.
Yeah, so the same. It's the same thing. The art of routing with Flask is, I mean, there are so many ways to do the same thing, but again the answer goes to so you can use the decorators for writing with HTTP methods. So yeah, get, post, put. You can use dynamic routes with variables and rules. So that at app.route decorators takes strings, it takes integers, it takes floats, and it takes paths with slashes. So I guess in terms of handling dynamic routes, that answers the question. It's not complicated at all.
Yeah, thank you. Another question. Choose
I have
a
a
question.
I have a question.
Okay, let's go.
Okay, thank you. Lately, I was working with Flask, but I'm a kind of person that like to set up everything before starting to really do the coding. So I was looking for something like a design pattern to structure all the app, but I didn't come up with something very convenient about Flask. Do you have any advice on this for me?
So one of the things that I like about the Flask world is the documentation is actually really good. So there is So there are two things in the Flask documentation that are in there. The first one, there are patterns for Flask, and then something else called design decisions in Flask. So I'm actually going to ask you to look at, oh, it's not here. It's right here in the documentation. I'm going to paste the link. So it's one of the things that I like. You can implement the MVC, excuse me, the MVC pattern in Flask applications, you know, model view controller. This is a good example. It's a bit outdated. It's from 3 years ago. And someone posted a really good tutorial. I think it was like 5 or 6 years ago in DigitalOcean. And even though it's old, I think it's got like really good ways to structure, for example, big, like large applications. So I'm going to paste that link to you in here. There's no real pattern that has to be followed. There's no right or wrong answer. We don't have specific design patterns. I would say take the patterns of Flask from the documentation as a good start point. Oh, and the design decisions from the documentation is also a really good read, because of how the architecture of Flask is from the beginning. The way to structure is very straightforward, very straightforward. So there are some good pointers in those links, especially the last one, ways to even simplify your process developing with Flask.
Okay, thank you.
Ok, est-ce qu'il y a d'autres questions? Diana, I have a question about GDE. I want to know how to get GDE GDE in Python. Yeah, if you have a resource of mentorship to build a community GDE in Python in Ivory Coast or in Africa.
Definitely, you know, in terms of community, the Python Software Foundation, in this case for Python, is the first source. Oh, the main idea is to empower leaders to get to community. So I can actually get you in touch, and we can be in touch by email, so I can point you to the right resources, because there are loads of resources. My goal before coronavirus was to reach out to as many communities as possible in Africa and try to unite more Python developers. I say Python because it's my passion, but I'm really looking forward to work with more communities in Africa and to put you in touch with more resources should you want that. So you'll have my email address. If not, you'll have me on Twitter. You can send me a DM and I'll point you to the right resources.
Ok, thank you. Bon, les gars, est-ce que vous êtes prêts pour qu'on fasse en fait une communauté de Python, hein? Elle va nous guider là-dessus en fait. Est-ce que vous êtes prêts?
Ouais.
Si vous êtes d'accord pour qu'on fasse une communauté de Python, pour qu'elle soit notre guide ou notre mentor, d'accord? Et puis après, peut-être qu'on aura des GDE en fait qui seront africains, qui vont être en Donc, si vous êtes d'accord, après, on va dresser la liste, on va lui envoyer et puis on va programmer des sessions. C'est bon?
Ouais, ça roule.
OK. Diana. Thank you very much. You have another question?
Another question.
Can I use another template engine instead of Jinja? Yes.
Well, yes, but I would say it's much easier if you use Jinja. The default is Jinja 2. Using a different template engine would mean you having to tweak a lot. And in my case, I am too lazy to just change the defaults. I like Jinja too because it's very easy, because it's plug and play. But yeah, you can technically do it. It would just take a lot of, well, not a lot, but a little bit more development.
Okay. Thank you.
Hello there.
Okay, let's go. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Diana. My question, what the requirement to create the database in Flask Python?
You can use any database, like we call those ORM in English, Object Relational Manager. I use Flask SQL Alchemy, so it's SQL Alchemy. It's the easiest way to use databases in Flask. Personally, I like it because it's very light, but you can use Postgres. I think Postgres is a good choice as well. My favorite, SQL Alchemy.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, another question. Alors, s'il n'y a plus de questions, on va clore la session. Je rappelle que les G2. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. I want to know if you have a particular project that you want that beginners make to discover Flask.
So in the slides, the awesome Flask resource has the best list of everything you can find and do when you're starting to develop with Flask. I would say check the slides link I posted. I'm actually going to post that again, and you can find all the resources you need in the last slide. You'll have everything you need to get kicking with Flask.
I have another question, please. Can I ask it? Am I audible?
Let's go.
Oh, okay. Is there in Flask something like a middleware in routing?
Is a really good question. You can introduce WSGI middleware to wrap Flask instances, and yeah, there's actually a few articles. So you have a lot of Flask. So the Flask class itself has a lot of methods that are designed for subclassing. So you can add by subclassing Flask. And then you can use that subclass wherever you want to instantiate an application class. It works really good with things like application factories. You can also write with middleware, like there is in the Flask documentation, there is a part called application dispatching, and because Flask is based on Werkzeug, you can actually see things like X forwarded for proxy fixes, to serve, share static files, proxies, profilers. Actually, yeah, you know what? I have to link this to you because it's a very interesting. And
Okay.
yeah, before I don't think I have any more links in here, but it's actually really cool. Je veux que vous sachiez que je vais travailler avec votre communauté si vous voulez, et que je suis là pour vous. So, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I am very happy for that. And you are
Mira,
available.
terrible setup tenés. ¿A cuánto FPS te va el Fortnite?
Mateo, can you repeat, please? It's very hard-
Sorry. Le preguntaba a mi hermano. I was asking to my brother. Sorry.
Ok. Donc, elle dit qu'elle est disponible pour travailler en fait avec nous, avec notre communauté. Donc, je viens de Ezekiel.
Fils de pute.
Oui, c'est ça. Ezekiel, si tu peux remettre le lien du chat, on va créer un salon pour que tout le monde puisse rejoindre, tous ceux qui veulent participer à la communauté.
Sorry.
Et puis, avec Diana, on va voir avec Diana, on va voir comment est-ce qu'on pourrait faire un programme pour qu'on puisse travailler.
in your ass, motherfucker.
What's happened?
Sorry.
Ok. Avec Diana, on pourra voir comment est-ce qu'on pourra faire
Fils
un
de
programme.
pute.
On va faire un programme pour qu'on puisse travailler en fait avec eux, hein, avec elle en fait. Voilà. Donc, pour essayer de voir si on pourrait travailler sur de gros projets et puis préparer ceux qui veulent devenir G2 Python, Google Developer Expert en Python en fait. Voilà pour le programme. Yeah. OK. Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres préoccupations, d'autres questions? OK, il n'y a plus d'autres questions. Diana, on va clore la réunion, la session pour aujourd'hui. Vraiment, merci beaucoup pour ton temps. Thank you very much for your time and for available. And after this session, we are planning a mini session for next month, and we will build a community there, and we work with you to after to get GDE and Python community. Ok, donc merci à tous et puis on se retrouve demain pour une autre session. Ezekias, quelle est la session qui est prévue pour demain? Ok, la session qui est prévue pour demain, en fait, c'est leadership, d'accord? Et ça sera à partir de 16h, de 16h à 17h. Elle sera animée par Jora qui est DSC leader du Cameroun, en fait, à Yaoundé, en fait. Donc, on se retrouve demain, d'accord? Et puis, pour ceux qui veulent pour participer en fait pour la communauté. Donc, j'aurais besoin de la liste en fait. Donc, je partage mon mail avec tout le monde. Vous pouvez m'écrire pour que je puisse vous renseigner en fait pour faire la liste en fait, la base de données et puis envoyer ça à Diana pour qu'on puisse déjà planifier les prochaines sessions et puis comment est-ce qu'on pourra organiser les prochaines sessions. Voilà.
Allô?
Donc, prenez mon mail et puis écrivez-moi automatiquement pour qu'on puisse le faire.
Allô?
Okay. Oui,
Ahmed?
Jean-Pierre.
J'espère qu'il n'y a pas de souci. Moi, je suis au Togo.
Non, il n'y a pas de souci. On fera les sessions en ligne. La communauté est ouverte. Si vous êtes au Burkina, au Mali, partout où vous voulez, si vous êtes partout, on pourra travailler ensemble. Il n'y a pas de souci pour ça. Donc, prenez mon mail et puis envoyez-moi en fait envoyez-moi signez, écrivez votre nom, dites pour la communauté Python et tout ça. Je vais renseigner en fait dans la base de données et puis après on va discuter avec Diana en off et puis après on va vous contacter en fait pour pouvoir programmer les prochaines sessions. C'est bon pour tout le monde?
Ouais.
Ok. Alors, donc, on se retrouve demain à partir de 16h et puis bonne soirée à tous. Goodbye, Diana. Thank you very much and good night. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye bye. Have a good night.
Thank you very much. Bye.